Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmittam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayati Girim Yat Kripa Tamam Bande Shri Guru Dinataranam Nama Shrishtam Manamati Sachiputramatra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Gustavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Oho Radhika Madhavasram Rapto Yasya Pratika Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vancha Kalpadurubhascha Kripa Sindhudevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namah. Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurachishe Namaha. Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradaya Kalau Kalamashanashaya Karunavataraya Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Tamami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jayatam Suruto Pangor Mama Mandamatergati Matsarvasvapranam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadha Srimad Ratnagar Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devam Vishkadikhi Sevyamano Srinami Srimandra Ki Vamshi Vata Tatakstitaha Karshana Venus Manayar Gopir Gopinata Shriyestunaha Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Kshiptascha Kamadhitaranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanarvindam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, altogether, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipful beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad, Paramahansa Astutarashata, Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, that I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Guru Devs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarushata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Asto Tarushata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat pranams at the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nupa Guru Varga. And I offer my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and all the Vaishnavas. So we're continuing with our transcendental reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chapter 4, Adi Lila. And we have come now to the 62nd verse. So, in the previous couple of shlokas, we heard about Srimati Radhika being the transformation of Krishna's love. Radhika hoyan Krishna pranay vikar. That means that Radhika is the transformation of Krishna's pranay, Krishna's love. And also Swarup Shakti Ladini Nam Jahar. That she is what? His Swarup Shakti. His personal energy, his internal energy. And what is the name of that energy? Hladini Nam Jahar. Hladini is the name of that energy. So, now he's talking about that energy. What does that energy do? Hladini Karai Krishna Anandasvadana. That means that this Hladini energy gives Krishna pleasure. Hladini. Krishna does not enjoy what? The illusory reflection of the spiritual potency in the form of Maya Shakti. No. He enjoys through his internal potency, Hladini Shakti, and this is now going to be a very in-depth explanation of this principle and the principle of Radha and Krishna and how they represent Sat-Chit Ananda as what? As Samvid Shakti, Samdini Shakti, Samvid Shakti, and Hladini Shakti. This is the analysis going to be given now, so that we thoroughly understand who is Radha and Krishna. So, Hladini Karai Krishna Ananda Asvadana. Krishna tastes Ananda. Ananda Asvadana through what? Through Hladini Shakti potency. That's how Krishna tastes happiness, Ananda. Without that Hladini Shakti, he cannot taste. Then Hladini Dvara Kore Bhaktera Poshana. Not only Krishna, but also that Hladini Shakti nourishes who? All of Krishna's devotees. So, we read the purport the other day for this verse, where Jiva Goswami is elaborately discussing the Hladini potency in his Priti Sandarbha, and he says that the Vedas clearly state, quote, only devotional service can lead one to the personality of Godhead. Only devotional service can help a devotee meet the Supreme Lord face to face. The Supreme Supreme Personality of Godhead is attracted to devotional service. And as such, the ultimate supremacy of Vedic knowledge rests in knowing the science of devotional service, bhakti. What is the particular attraction that makes the Supreme Lord enthusiastic to accept devotional service? What is it? And what is the nature of such service? So why the Supreme Lord is actually attracted? He becomes enthusiastic to accept the bhakti of his devotees. So what is the nature of that service? So the Vedic scriptures inform us that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, is self-sufficient. And that Maya, in essence, can never influence him at all. Therefore, the potency that overcomes the Supreme, it must be purely spiritual, right? If Krishna is not influenced at all by his Maya Shakti, then the potency that does influence Krishna has to be purely spiritual. Such a potency cannot be anything of the material manifestation. The bliss enjoyed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be of material composition. Like the impersonalist conception of the bliss of Brahman. Here it's compared to a material composition. Devotional service is reciprocation between two, and therefore it cannot be located simply within one's self, like the impersonalist conception of the bliss of Brahman. No. Therefore the bliss of self-realization, Brahma Ananda, it cannot be equated with devotional service, because there's only one. The Supreme Personality of God has three kinds of internal potency, namely the Hladini Shakti, or his pleasure potency, the Sandhini Shakti, or his existential potency, and the Samvit Shakti, or his cognitive potency. In the Vishnu Purana, the Lord is addressed as follows, quote, O Lord, you are the support of everything. And the three attributes, Hladini, Sandhini, and Samvit, exist in you as one spiritual energy. But the material modes which cause happiness, misery, and the mixture of the two, they do not exist in you, for you have no material qualities. Now, this is a quote from the Vishnu Purana. If I had the first line of the verse, I could remember. Now, Hladini. Hladini is the personal manifestation of the blissfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by which he enjoys pleasure. What is that? What is the manifestation of the blissfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by which he enjoys pleasure? What's it called? Hladini. So because the pleasure potency is perpetually present in the Supreme Lord, the theory of the impersonalist that the Lord appears in the material mode of goodness cannot be accepted. Bogus theory. The impersonalist conclusion is against the Vedic version that the Lord possesses a transcendental pleasure potency. So that conclusion, the impersonalist conclusion, it is against the Vedic version. Because the Vedic version is that the Lord possesses a transcendental pleasure potency. So when the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is exhibited by His grace in the person of a devotee, that manifestation is called love of God. When what? When the pleasure potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is exhibited by His grace in the person of a devotee, that manifestation is called what? love of God. Krishna praying. Love of God is an epithet for the pleasure potency of the Lord. Love of God. Pleasure potency. Ladini. And therefore devotional service reciprocated between the Lord and his devotee. This is an exhibition of the transcendental pleasure potency of the Lord. The potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that always enriches him with transcendental bliss is not material. But the Shankarites have accepted it as such because they are ignorant of the identity of the Supreme Lord and his pleasure potency. So those ignorant persons cannot understand the distinction between impersonal spiritual bliss and the variegatedness of the spiritual pleasure potency. They cannot understand. The Ladini potency gives the Lord all transcendental pleasure, and the Lord bestows such a potency upon his pure devotee. That's the purport. Now, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is going on, and he's telling about Krishna's body. Yes? What? 61 now. 61. So now Krishnadas Kaviraj is telling about Krishna's body. Sachidananda Purna, Krishner Swarup. Eka I Chit Shakti Tar Dhare Teen Rup. This means Sachidananda Purna. Krishna, Lord Krishna's body is eternal Sat, full of knowledge, Chit, full of bliss, Ananda. Krishner Swarup. This is his Swarup. So, his one spiritual energy, Eka I Chit Shakti, his one Chit Shakti, Tara Dhare Teen Rup. It manifests three forms. His one Chit Shakti manifests three forms. Anandamse Hladini Sadamse Sandini. Chidamse Samvit Jare Jnana Kori Mani. Hladini is his aspect of bliss. Sandini of eternal existence. And Samvit of cognizance, which is also accepted as knowledge. Now, in the purport. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada is now quoting Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami, in his thesis, Bhakti Sandarbha. So, and it has the actual verse here, 103. That Srila Jiva Goswami explains the potencies of the Lord as follows in his Bhagavat Sandarbha. Here he says, quote, the transcendental potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by which he maintains his existence, it is called Sandini. And the transcendental potency by which he knows himself and he causes others to know him is called Samvit. And the transcendental potency by which he possesses transcendental bliss and he causes his devotees to have bliss is called Ladini. Jiva Goswami goes on. The total exhibition of these potencies is called Vishuddha Sattva. And this platform of spiritual variegatedness, it is displayed even in the material world when the Lord appears here. What is displayed? Vishuddha Sattva. The total exhibition of all of his potencies. So that very platform of spiritual variegatedness is displayed even in the material world when the Lord appears here. The pastimes and the manifestations of the Lord in the material world are therefore not at all material. They belong to the pure transcendental state. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that anyone who understands the transcendental nature of the Lord's appearance, activities, and his disappearance, anyone becomes eligible for freedom from material bondage upon quitting the present material tabernacle. We all know that verse, don't we? Krishna's verse. Prabhupada quoted this. It's definitely in the top 5 or 10 of all the verses that he quoted from Bhagavad Gita. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mam eti. So Arjuna. Very good promise. This sloka is many times quoted because it gives such great hope for the devotees. Because Krishna is telling in a very straightforward and simple way, anyone who understands the what? Divyam, the transcendental nature of my birth, my janma, and my activities, my karma, janma karma cha me divyam, evam yo veti tattvataha. That person, yo veti tattvataha, who understands this, what? In tattva, full tattva gyan, full realization of Krishna's birth, his appearance, his activities, everything. Even he says his disappearance here. Then what happens to that person? Tyaktva deham punar janmanaiti. When he gives up this temporary body, tyaktva deham, this temporary deha, made of material energy, when that person gives up this material body, he doesn't again take birth. Punar janmanaiti. He does not again take janma. Punar janma. He does not again take birth. But what happens to him? Mam eti. He comes to me, O Arjuna. So, yes. So the Bhagavad Gita confirms that anyone who understands the transcendental nature of the Lord's appearance, activities, and his disappearance becomes eligible for freedom from material bondage upon quitting the present material tabernacle. So if we wanted to summarize the whole process of bhakti yoga, of hearing and chanting, shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, vandanam, padasevanam, you can summarize it in this verse. That we are making our attempt to have full tattva, full realization, tattva gyan of Krishna. And full realization of Krishna means Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, everything. But here Krishna says, my appearance and also my activities. So, in India, there's about 1 billion human beings, and probably, I don't know what percentage, but 60% or 70% are Hindu. And they've all heard about Krishna. They've all heard the name Krishna, right? All of them. And they've heard the name Ram, and even the Muslims have heard the name Krishna and Ram. You cannot live in India without hearing about Krishna and Ram, or seeing pictures of them, or seeing temples, right? But how many persons actually have very carefully sat in the presence of fully realized Mahabhagavad pure Vaishnavas when they are narrating the transcendental Harikatha of Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastimes, everything. And they have surrendered. And they are practicing the process of Bhakti Yoga. And now they have come to realize and understand, yes, Krishna, he doesn't take birth in the material world like we do. He's completely transcendental. And all of his activities, they're completely above the activities of this mundane plane. He's completely transcendental. So, if a person becomes so fortunate that they now live their life with this conception and they go on trying to perform the process of Bhakti Yoga, very soon they will be saying goodbye forever to the material tabernacle, the material plane, and they will go to the spiritual world, to Krishna, forever, forever. So that's Krishna's promise in the Bhagavad Gita. So, he becomes eligible for freedom from material bondage upon quitting the present material tabernacle. Tell me the meaning of this word, our editor-in-chief here. Tabernacle. Because I know that it sounds like a biblical word. Huh?
Tabernacle would be the inner sanctum of the temple.
Is it what?
Inner sanctum of the temple.
Inner sanctum
Of a temple.
of the temple. A tabernacle.
Holy of holies.
Huh?
The holy of holies.
Yeah. But how does that apply to the material body?
Well, the body is a temple, but within that temple there's a cave. The
Yeah.
heart,
Right.
the soul, the super soul, the God.
So when they escape from the tabernacle of the cave of the material body, then they can go to the spiritual world, huh? Okay. Yes. Now, what happens to that person? He can enter the spiritual kingdom to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can go there. And he can reciprocate the Ladini potency in transactions between him and the Lord. In the mundane mode of goodness, there are tinges of passion and ignorance. I was just listening to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada this morning. And he was saying exactly this, that there is no pure goodness in the material world. It's always mixed with passion and ignorance. But Vishuddha Sattva, it is not. So, therefore, mundane goodness being mixed, it is called Mishra Sattva. Mishra means mixed. Sattva means existence. Mixed existence. But the transcendental variegatedness of Vishuddha Sattva, it is completely free from all material qualities. Vishuddha Sattva is therefore the proper atmosphere in which to experience the personality of Godhead and His transcendental pastimes. We want to go there, to the Vishuddha Sattva plane of existence. So spiritual variegatedness is eternally independent of all material conditions. And it is non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both being absolute. The Lord and His devotees, they simultaneously perceive the Ladini potency directly by the power of the which potency? What potency enables the devotees and the Lord to directly perceive this Valadini potency. Samvit potency, yes, through the Samvit potency. The material modes of nature control the conditioned souls, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He's never influenced by these modes, as all Vedic literatures directly and indirectly corroborate. Lord Krishna Himself says in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 11.25.12, Sattvam rajas tama iti guna jivasya naiva me. This means that the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, they are connected with the conditioned souls, but never with me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's his statement to Uddhava in the 25th chapter of the 11th canto. Now the Vishnu Purana confirms this as follows. Here's the verse from the Vishnu Purana. Satvadayo nasantishe yatra na prakrita guna nashuddha sarva shuddhebhya puman adya prasidatu. This means the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu is beyond three qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance. No material qualities exist in Him. May that original person, Narayan, who is situated in a completely transcendental position, may he be pleased with us. Then in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Indra praises Krishna as follows. In the 10th canto, 27th chapter, verse 4, he says, Vishuddha sattvam tavadama shantam tapomayam dvashta rajas tamaskam maya mayoyam gunasam pravaho navidyate te grahananu bandaha. My dear Lord, when did Indra tell this to Krishna? And where? Where were they? Where was Krishna and Indra when Indra said this to Krishna? Govinda Kunda in Govardhan. Why was Krishna there at Govinda Kunda forest area? Why was Krishna there? Why did Krishna go there? He was there by himself, or maybe he had a couple of cowherd boys with him. Right? But he didn't have the whole group. And what was Krishna doing? This was exactly after what happened. 7 days, 7 nights of devastation, rainfall, thunder, lightning, and the utmost attempt of Indra to destroy Braj and the Brijvasis. But what did Krishna do? Very simple. Krishna didn't have to exert wrong hand. Left hand. Why left hand? Because on your left side of your body is your heart. So Srimati Radhika is on Krishna's left side. Actually, Gurudev has told so many times that actually Srimati Radhika lifted Govardhan Hill. So, and then your little finger of your left hand is on the leftmost side. So, Srimati Radhika. She's the power of Krishna. So Krishna held up the hill 7 days, 7 nights. And the Brijvasis, they didn't sleep, they were entranced. They were in ecstasy. No one was becoming bored or tired or in anxiety. When is the rain going to stop? No. They were completely filled with ecstatic bliss, and underneath Giriraj, there were like fields and fields of wonderful, luscious green grasses there were waterfalls, there were rivulets, and all beautiful sitting places. It wasn't that the hill was lifted and there was just dirt there. No. Giriraj supplied everything. Because who is Giriraj? Giriraj is the one. Govardhano Jayati Shaila Kuladi Rajo Yogo Pika Birrito Haridasavaryo. He's Haridasavarya. He's the best servant of Hari. No one can compare with him. And who said that? Radhika herself. Yes. Krishnena Shakra Makabanga Kritarchitoya Saptahamasya Karapadma Talepya Vatsi Saptahamela Chutahassa Pankaje Bringayamanam Falamula Kandarai Samsevyamanam Harim Atma Vrindakayar Govardhanadrim Shirsha Namami Govardhanadrim Shirsha Namami. Because Govardhan supplies everything needed. Harim Atma Vrindakayar. For all of Krishna's most dear associates, Govardhan is supplying all necessary items for Krishna's pastimes. Everything is supplied by Giriraj. So, at the end of the futile attempt and the crushing of his pride, then Krishna invited then Indra gave up. He gave up in complete exhaustion and complete despair. And then everything cleared, and Krishna invited, now all of you can go. Now Giriraj will himself place himself down. He's doing everything. So then they all came out like streams of milk, all the cows, everything. And then Giriraj was placed down by Krishna. And now all the Brajvasis surrounded Krishna, and they were rubbing his arms, and they were embracing him, and all the beautiful loving reciprocations. So then Krishna decided that it was time to go for a short excursion to examine whatever damage was done by the rains of Indra, right? He wanted to examine and see, but nothing was harmed at all. Not one leaf, not one blade of grass. So, but he knew that Indra was feeling really bad. He was feeling probably the most depressed that he's ever felt. And he began to understand that in his absolute illusion, he was actually trying to defeat the Supreme Lord, who he thought was just a little cowherd boy in ordinary village life. As a tiny little cowherd boy, he completely defeated and pulverized the pride of Indra. So he's not an ordinary cowherd boy. So Indra approached, but who came with Indra? Can't hear. Yes. Surabhi Devi came with Indra. Who else? No. Yes, Airavata, Indra's elephant. Yes. So then, of course, Indra came and fell at the feet and washed the feet of Krishna with his tears. And then Indra, he wanted to apologize and to glorify Krishna. He was very afraid that Krishna was not going to accept his apology, right? But he very sincerely, and he brought Surabhi Devi, who softened Krishna's heart, because Krishna loves the Surabhi house. So he brought her along, and then they came there. And then Indra approached Krishna, and he said very choice verses of praise to Krishna. So this is one of those verses. Indra is telling, my dear Lord, your abode is Vishuddha Sattva, always undisturbed by the material qualities. And the activities there are in transcendental loving service unto your feet. The goodness and austerity and penance of the devotees enhance such activities, which are always free from the contamination of passion and ignorance. Material qualities cannot touch you under any circumstances. So here, Indra is also substantiating this point about Vishuddha Sattva. Untouched, cannot touch at all. So, the explanation continues. When not manifested, the modes of material nature are said to be in goodness. When the modes are not manifested, when they're in their unmanifested state, then they're said to be in goodness. When they are externally manifested and they are active in producing the varieties of material existence, they are said to be in passion. And when there is a lack of activity and variegatedness, then they are said to be in ignorance. In other words, the pensive mood is goodness, activity is passion, and inactivity is ignorance. So above all these mundane qualitative manifestations, above all these is what? Vishuddha Sattva. What? Yes. So when it is predominated by the Sandhini potency, then it is perceivable as the existence of all that be. And when predominated by the Samvid potency, it is perceived as knowledge in transcendence. And when predominated by the Hladini potency, it is perceived as the most confidential love of Godhead. So Vishuddha Sattva, the simultaneous manifestation of these three in one, it is the main feature of the kingdom of God. This is the main feature of the kingdom of God. This Vishuddha Sattva, simultaneous manifestation of these three potencies, Samvit, Sandhini, and Hladini, in one. That's the main feature of the kingdom of God. So the Absolute Truth is therefore the substance of reality. And it is eternally manifested in three energies. So the manifestation of the internal energy of the Lord is the inconceivably variegated spiritual world. And the manifestation of the marginal energy comprises the what? The living entities. And the manifestation of the external energy is the material cosmos. Therefore, the Absolute Truth includes these four principles. What are these four principles? The Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, His internal energy, His marginal energy, and His external energy. This is the Absolute Truth. It includes these four principles. The form of the Lord and the expansions of His forms as Swayam Rupa and Vaibhav Prakash. These are directly the enjoyers of the internal energy, which is the eternal exhibitor of the spiritual world, the most confidential of the manifestations of energy. The external manifestation, the material energy, It provides the covering bodies of the conditioned living entities from Brahma down to the insignificant ant. What energy provides that? What? The material energy, the external manifestation. This covering energy is manifested under the three modes of material nature, and it is appreciated in various ways by living entities in both the higher and the lower forms of life. So this is the final paragraph. This is a bit of a long purport by Prabhupada. So each of the three divisions of the internal potency, the Sandini, the Samvit, and the Ladini energies, each of them influences one of the external potencies. Understand? Each one of these three influences one of the three external potencies. So, the Sandini, the Samvit, and the Ladini energies influences one of the external potencies by which the conditioned souls are conducted. Such influence manifests the three qualitative modes of material nature, proving definitively that the living entities and the marginal potency are eternally servitors of the Lord. And they are therefore controlled by either the internal or the external potency. So, yes. Here's the verse that was quoted in the purport that we read, and I thought, it's from the Vishnu Purana, and I was saying that if I only had the first line of that verse, then I couldn't remember it. But now the actual verse is being quoted by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and it says, Ladini Sandini Samvit Twaeka Sarva Samstito Hlada Tapa Kari Mishra Twai No Gunavarjite. So this means, O Lord, you are the support of everything. The three attributes of Ladini, Sandini, and Samvit, they exist in you as one spiritual energy. But the material modes which cause happiness, misery, and the mixtures of the two, they do not exist in you, for you have no material qualities. So, material modes of nature, they cause three things. What are those three things? Happiness, misery, and then the mixture of the two. That's the material world. Hlada Tapa Kori Mishra. Lada Tapa means pleasure and misery. Kori Mishra, causing the mixture of the two. So, but that does not exist in you, O Lord, because you have no material qualities. So, now, here's the description of these three energies. Sandinir Sar Amsha Shuddha Sattva Nam. The essential portion of the Sandini potency, the Sar Amsha, the essential portion of the Sandini potency, it is called Shuddha Sattva. Bhagavanir Satta Hoy Jahara Vishram. Lord Krishna's existence rests upon it. Isn't that interesting? Lord Krishna's existence, Bhagavanir Satta, Satta means his existence, Hoy Jahara Vishram, the resting place. This is Krishna's Satta, his existence, Bhagavanir Satta. It rests upon what? Sandini potency, Shuddha Sattva. So now here's an explanation of that. Mata, Pita, Stan, Griha, Shayasana are a sub Krishner Shuddha Satver Vikar. Oh, Krishna's mother, Krishna's father, his abode, his house, his bedding, his seats, and so on. They are all transformations of Shuddha Sattva. What are they transformations of? Shuddha Sattva. So Prabhupada is explaining that Lord Krishna's father, mother, and his household affairs, they are all displayed in the same Vishuddha Sattva existence. A living entity situated in the status of pure goodness can understand the form, qualities, and other features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If what? If he is situated in the status of pure goodness, Vishuddha Sattva. Krishna consciousness begins on the platform of pure goodness. Krishna consciousness begins on the platform of pure goodness. Although there is a faint realization of Krishna at first, but Krishna is actually realized as Vasudeva, the absolute proprietor of omnipotence, or the prime predominating deity of all potencies. So, there is a faint realization of Krishna at first. But Krishna is actually fully realized as Vasudeva. So when the living entity is situated in Vishuddha Sattva, transcendental to the three material modes of nature, he can perceive the form, qualities, and other features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his service attitude. Yeah? Why? Because he's now above the material modes of nature. He's situated in Vishuddha Sattva. The status of pure goodness is the platform of understanding, for the Supreme Lord is always in spiritual existence. Is the Lord sometimes not in spiritual existence? Is there ever a time when the Supreme Lord is not in spiritual existence? No. Never. The status of pure goodness is the platform of understanding. Why? Because the Supreme Lord is always in spiritual existence. So unless you're in spiritual existence, in Vishuddha Sattva, you won't be able to understand Him. So Krishna is always all spiritual. And aside from the parents of the personality of Godhead, all the other paraphernalia of His existence are also essentially a manifestation of Sandhini Shakti. Or they are a transformation of Vishuddha Sattva. Now to make this more clear, it may be said that this Sandhini Shakti of the internal potency, it maintains and manifests all the variegatedness of the spiritual world. Which Shakti? Sandhini Shakti. And in the kingdom of God, the Lord's servants, His maidservants, His consorts, His father and mother, and everything else are all transformations of the spiritual existence of Sandhini Shakti. All. The existential Sandhini Shakti in the external potency, again, the existential Sandhini Shakti in the external potency similarly expands all the variegatedness of the material cosmos, for which we can have a glimpse of the spiritual field, from which we can have a glimpse of the spiritual field. So whatever's existing here, It's not Vishuddha Sattva. But the Sandini potency, what does the Sandini potency do? It manifests through the external potency, and therefore that Sandini potency similarly expands all the variegatedness of the material cosmos. That's where it's coming from. But it's a perverted reflection. It's not the Sandini, it's not the Vishuddha Sattva. And then Prabhupada said, this variegatedness of the material cosmos enables us to have a glimpse of the spiritual field. A glimpse. Because it's a reflection of it. Everything in the material is a perverted reflection of it. So I bet you didn't know that. Yeah.
Generally we think of Sandini Shakti as being like personified by Baladev Prabhu.
Right. Yes.
So is it safe to say, in a sense, it's saying that like his mother and father, everything is coming from Sandini Shakti. In one sense, Baladev Prabhu is like his mother and father.
Just like Krishna's mother and father also comes from Krishna. Yes. But this is the medium through which Krishna's potencies are, because Krishna is desiring. He has the itcha. He has the desire. And even before he has the desire, his Yogamaya potency, his Sandini Shakti, Ladini, Samvit, everything. They do everything for Krishna, to serve Krishna. So, and when Krishna desires that there should be a material manifestation, those same potencies become active, but they are not directly acting. Only when Krishna descends, then those three potencies are fully manifested in the Bhom Lila of Krishna, in the abode that descends down from the spiritual world. But yet the material world is really a manifestation of Sandini Shakti potency. All the material variegatedness of the cosmic manifestation, all the bodies of the living, everything. But because it's manifested through the Maya Shakti potency, therefore it has the word inebriety. So, I think we didn't know that before we just heard this. Because if someone would have asked you this question previously, well, how does the material universe, with all of the variegatedness in the material universe, through which method does it expand? Well, here it is. Sandini Shakti. Existence potency. You know, I remember on Baladev Purnima, which comes at the end of the Jula Nyatra days, right? So, Gurudev was with us, and then he was telling devotees you should speak something about Baladev. Speak. So a couple of different devotees. And Gurudev said that actually all of existence is Baladev. Everything in the spiritual world, everything in the material world, all existence is Baladev. He's the predominating deity, like you're saying, of the existence, the Sandini potency. So it's actually just like Krishna is Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. So Baladev, his energies and all of the Sandini potency, everything is acting. Baladev is causing this to act. And of course we know that all of the manifestations of Godhead are all coming from Baladev ultimately. And so many different Mul Sankarshan, Ma Sankarshan, 3 Purusha avatars, Ananta Shesh, everything. It's all coming from Baladev ultimately. And Baladev is actually Krishna. He is Krishna. He just has a little bit slight difference. That's all. Otherwise he can't dance Ras Leela, right? Who can dance Ras Leela? Is there anyone who can dance Ras Leela in Braj with the gopis? Only Baladev. He can do that. Because he's Krishna. So, yes. And then here's the all-time classic. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shabditam Yad iyate tatra puman apavrita Sattve cha tasmin bhagavan vasudevo Hyadhoksajo me manasa vidiyate. So this is from Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 3rd chapter, 23rd verse, spoken by who? Lord Shiva. Yes. He spoke it to who? Who did Lord Shiva speak this verse to? He spoke it when he was condemning Daksha, the father of Sati, as an opponent of Vishnu. And this very verse, spoken by Lord Shiva, confirms beyond a doubt that Lord Krishna, his name, his fame, his qualities, everything in connection with his paraphernalia exist in the Sandhini Shakti of the Lord's internal potency. Sattvam Vishuddham Vasudeva Shaktitam Yad iyate tatra puman apavrita Sattve cha tasmin bhagavan Vasudevo Hyadhoksajo me manasa vidiyate. Here's the translation. The condition of pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed without any covering, it is called Vasudev. Not Vasudev, Vasudev. And in that pure state, the Supreme Godhead, who is beyond the material senses and who is known as Vasudev, is perceived by my mind. So Lord Shiva is not in the material sphere. Now the essence of the Samvit potency now. Now we've heard about the Sandhini potency. So now, Krishnadas Kaviraj is saying, Krishna Bhagavata Gyan Samvitera Sar. Samvitera Sar. Brahma Gyan Adika Sab Tar Paribar. So, the essence of the Samvit potency. Who is the predominating deity of the Samvit potency? There are three potencies. Ladini, Sandhini, Samvit. And there are three predominating deities of these three potencies. We already heard that Baladev Prabhu is the predominating deity of which potency? Sandhini. So who is the predominating deity of Samvit Shakti potency? Can't hear it. Krishna. And then, of course, we'll get to that. Ladini Shakti, Srimati Radhika. So, the essence, the sar of the Samvit potency, what is that? What is the essence of the Samvit potency? It's called Krishna Bhagavata Gyan. It means knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. No one can realize this fact unless the Samvit potency reveals that. So, he says, Brahma Jnanadika Sabtar Parivar. That means all other kinds of knowledge. Besides what? Besides knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Lord Krishna. Krishna Bhagavata Gyan. So all other types, all other kinds of knowledge, such as the knowledge of Brahman, Brahma Jnanadik. So all other types of knowledge are its what? Paribar. Components. They are the components, or also dependents. So the activities of the Samvit Shakti produce the effect of cognition. Cognition. No one can be cognizant of anything without Samvit Shakti. And that is also, of course, also manifested through the material energy. Both the Lord and the living entities are cognizant. Yes? I think, therefore I am. Remember that one? Who stated that one? Huh? Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Very deep statement. I think he might have read a little bit of the Vedas. Maybe. So, both the Lord and the living entities are cognizant. Sri Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has full knowledge of everything, everywhere, and therefore there are no hindrances to his cognition. He can have knowledge merely by glancing over an object. Whereas innumerable impediments block the cognition of ordinary living beings. The cognition of the living beings has three divisions: direct knowledge, indirect knowledge, and perverted knowledge. Oh, I want to mention, many times while Gurudev was physically present with us, devotees would remark, many devotees remarked that they had a subjective experience being in the presence of Gurudev. Maybe a few of you here may have also felt that. But when, and I felt it, I definitely, many times, you come in front of Srila Gurudev, you pay your obeisances in front of Gurudev, and Gurudev glances at you. Sometimes the word is used by the devotees to describe what's going on. Scanner. And guess what? He knows everything about you that even you don't know. So, the cognition of the living beings has three divisions: direct knowledge, indirect knowledge, and perverted knowledge. Yes. No, sense perception of material objects by the mundane senses, such as the eye, the ear, the nose, the hand, they always produce definitely perverted knowledge. Always, definitely, perverted knowledge. This illusion, it is a presentation of the material energy, which is influenced by the Samvit Shakti in a perverted manner. So negative cognition of an object beyond the reach of sense perception, negative cognition of an object beyond the reach of sense perception is the way of indirect knowledge. You don't really know it directly. But what? Negative cognition. And this negative cognition, which is the way of indirect knowledge, it is not altogether imperfect, but it produces only fragmentary knowledge in the form of impersonal spiritual realization and monism. That's all. That's the indirect, the negative cognition of an object, which is beyond the reach of sense perception. But when the Samvit factor of cognition is enlightened by the Hladini potency of the same internal energy, they work together, and only thus can one attain knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So the Samvid Shakti should be maintained in that state. Material knowledge and indirect spiritual knowledge are byproducts of the Samvid Shakti. So we'll just read one more verse, and it's about Hladini Shakti. Hladini Sar. What does that mean? Hladini Sar. It means the essence of the Hladini Shakti. The essence. Hladini Sar Prem. What is the essence of Hladini? Prem. Prem is the essence of Hladini. Now, Prem Sar, what's the essence of Prem? Bhav. Bhav is the essence of Prem. That's not the Bhav prior to Prem. This is the Bhav within the realm of Prem. Prem, Sneha, Pranay, Bhav, like this. So, now, Bhaver Paramakashta. What is the highest limit, Paramakashta, of Bhav? Oh, Nam Mahabhav. Mahabhav is the Paramakashta. That means the highest limit of Bhav. So, let's repeat this again. I'll ask you the question. What's the essence of Hladini? What? I can't hear. Yes? What's the essence of Prem? What's the ultimate, highest limit of Bhav? Mahabhav. So, yes, and the next verse, there's a little purport here, but I want to go straight to the next verse because it continues the same sequence. Now that Mahabhav, which is the essence of the essence of the essence of Hladini, Mahabhav Swarupa. Mahabhav Swarupa, the form of Mahabhav, Shri Radha Thakurani. Shri Radha Thakurani is the form of Mahabhav. And Sarva Gunakani Krishna Kanta Shiromani. She is the repository of all good qualities and the crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. Krishna Kanta Shiromani. So, Prabhupada is telling that the product of the Hladini Shakti is love of Godhead, which has two divisions, namely pure love of Godhead and adulterated love of Godhead. And only when the Hladini Shakti emanates from Shri Krishna and is bestowed upon the living being to attract him, then, only then, does the living being become a pure lover of God. But when the same Hladini Shakti is adulterated by the external material energy, and it emanates from the living being, it does not attract Krishna. On the contrary, the living being becomes attracted by the glamour of the material energy. And at that time, instead of becoming mad with love of Godhead, the living entity becomes mad after material sense enjoyment, and because of his association with the qualitative modes of material nature, he is captivated by its interactions of distressful, unhappy feelings. Not a good place. But Shri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of Mahabhav. she is the repository of all good qualities, and she is the crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. So, this is the last thing I'll read now. Prabhupada says, the unadulterated action of the Ladini Shakti is displayed in the dealings of the damsels of Vraja. And Srimati Radharani, who is the topmost participant in that transcendental group, by both the damsels of Vraja as well as Srimati Radharani. The essence of the Ladini Shakti is love of Godhead. The essence of love of Godhead is bhav, or transcendental sentiment. And the highest pitch of that bhav is called Mahabhav. And Srimati Radharani is the personified embodiment of these three aspects of transcendental consciousness. She is therefore the highest principle in love of Godhead, and she is the supreme lovable object of Sri Krishna. So if we didn't understand this, we cannot say that we understand Srimati Radharani. If someone does not understand this, what we just read today, this is one of the most, how do you say, very specific knowledge. The collection of all the different tattva jnana is there in what we read today. But why is this being presented? For the purpose of rasa tattva. For the purpose of rasa tattva. Because how you can understand rasa tattva, Krishna praying, Mahabhav, any of these things if you don't understand Radha and Krishna. And how these three energies, Sandini, Samvit and Ladini, they are manifesting all the activities, all the forms, the whole creation of spiritual existence, and then pervertedly, through the material energy, they manifest all material existence. And all emotions. Like Prabhupada said, perverted love of Godhead means that you become mad after the material energy. But that's actually love of Godhead perverted. But through that, Krishna can never be attracted. And the living entity becomes more and more attracted to the material energy. So this is important tattva to understand. That's why Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha. If you understand everything in tattva, in truth, in reality, then you can go to the spiritual world very easily. Without that, you can't. So we're finishing here on verse 69. Tomorrow we will read, not tomorrow, on Tuesday, we will read the beautiful verse that says, of the two gopis, Radharani and Chandravali, Srimati Radharani is superior in all respects. And what? Mahabhav Swarupayam Gunar Ativariyasi. That she is the embodiment of Mahabhav. And she surpasses all in good qualities. So, Sri Chaitanya Charitamritam Ki Jai. Jai Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Pada Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Gurudeva Ki Jai. Sri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. Samvita Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. So Mahamantra.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna
Sarkar Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhar Giridhara Shri Shri Radha Vinod Bihari Jiv Ki Jai Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Sachinandan Gaura Hari Ki Jai Shri Nityananda Mahajan Ki Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ananta Gaudiya Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Vrindai Tulsi Nivai Priyai Keshava Sucha Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Satchavachai Namo Namaha Pancha Kalvatarubhascha Kripa Sindhuvedacha Patitanam Bhavani Namo Namaha. Only 2 more days left with our dearmost God brother and God sister Vishal Prabhu and Nischintani. Only 2 more days. And we have to weep in separation. So Tuesday, next class, but Thursday is what? Nishringa Chaturdashi. Yes? Yes. And Nishringa Chaturdashi is followed by the next day. What kind of eclipse? What? Lunar. And that lunar eclipse is affecting India. What time does it begin? What time does it end?
Like 9 to 1. 9 p.m.
9 p.m. Oh, okay. 9 p.m. till 1 in the morning. Okay.
I think it's also Madhavendra Puri Bhag's appearance day, Srinivasa Acharya's appearance day, and somebody's disappearance day.
Madhavendra Puri this is on
The day after
Nishringa, the day after, okay.
And Srinivasa Acharya and...
On the eclipse day?
Yeah.